Hey everybody, Romi here. Thank you for joining me. Oh, wow. Okay, so I cannot believe it's already Friday again. So today I have a new camera because my son told me I looked like a frog on the other one. So, so I got a new one. So I hope that that helps show my hands and my face and everything else. So, at any rate, here's crossing my fingers that I don't look like a frog anymore. Today, we are going to talk about the second clue and also a few other little housekeeping things that I didn't talk about last time, but they really apply to the whole shawl. And then I also have a request from somebody to show how to use a shawl pin. So I'm also going to go through that as well. So I will be watching the chat, although this is a little bit delayed. So I will be talking, and then it takes a little while for you to see um, my video, and then takes me a little time to see your chat. So just be patient, but I will go through the whole chat. And hopefully, if you have questions, I will get to those questions. So I'm just going to check and see what everybody's saying. Um, oh, 2 a.m. in Israel. Thank you for joining. Alrighty, I am going to transition over to my hands, and I have a few things to show you. And this kind of portends to just everyday lace knitting, but it also has a lot to do with this, obviously, because there's a lot of lace in this shawl. So let me just scoot on over. Okay, so we talked about swatching before and blocking your swatch into um, exactly the way that you'll want to do your finished object. So in other words, if you are going to stretch the heck out of your finished object, then you want to stretch the heck out of your swatch. So I did see a few comments of people going down because they felt like their yarn overs were sloppy or that the lace was sloppy or something like that. And I just wanted to show you this in case you're nervous about the lace looking bad. So this is lace weight alpaca, and this is a swatch. And you can see, the yarn overs look pretty even. The pattern comes out really beautifully on it. So I want to show you what this looks like before it's blocked. So this is what it looks like before it's blocked. And this is another great reason to swatch anytime you're doing lace, and especially anytime if any of you are knitting with alpaca, and there's a lot of alpaca in the floating kits, if you got a floating kit like I did. So you can see in here how terrible that looks. And I mean, it really looks like something your cat dragged in. But this is what it looks like after it's blocked. So this is just with wetting it completely and then pinning it out and letting it dry. So huge difference there. So even when it starts to lose its block, it will keep the evenness in the stitches, and you'll be able to still see the pattern even though it will relax a little bit depending on the fiber you used. And I always like to show if you knit something like this and you think, oh my God, I really need to go down many needle sizes, I want you to see this one was on US 6 needles here. This one right here is on size zeros. And you can see it's the same pattern and everything, same number of repeats. And you can see it still looks terrible. So it's just the nature of lace and all of that negative space in your knitting. And that's what it pulls your fabric every which way. And so you really need something to sort of set it and make it look better. If if you're going along and you think something looks terrible, you can also just steam block it and have it block out. You'll be able to see the pattern, or you can just stretch it over your knees like this. You'll be able to see the pattern. But definitely, if you're getting discouraged, definitely just steam it out a little bit or block it or something like that, and you'll be able to see the beauty of the lace pattern. So one more thing I want to show you, because I'm a proponent of swatching. So this is garter stitch, just plain old garter stitch. And this one is unblocked, and you can see how squishy that is, and it's very dense. So this is knit on a US 4 needle, and it's a fingering weight yarn. And because it's knit at a larger gauge than you would usually look for on the ball band, you're going to have a lot more stretch when it's blocked. So this one is blocked. And these have been traveling around with me for a long time, like in the before times. These came in my luggage all the time. And so this has lost a lot of its block, but I'm going to put these two together at the bottom here. So you can see they're together at the bottom. Same exact size swatch. One is blocked and one is not. You can see up top here how much difference there is in the row gauge. So even though this is not lace, it's worked at just a larger gauge than you usually would think to work it. If you were going to do a sock or something, you'd probably be working this on US zeros or ones. So this little, that, that's how much difference it's going to be. So it's important to measure your gauge. Okay, so I did have somebody ask me about how to wear a shawl pin, like how to pin something through. This is the pin I made for this mystery. And since I have a swatch out, I'm just going to show you how to do this. So this is what the pin looks like, and you can see that if there's some spring to it. So this is work hardened metal, and the tip here is blunt. So that's a blunt and rounded tip. And when you use that, you're going to want to go in between the stitches. So you're not splitting pieces of yarn like the plies of the yarn. And that is why it has that blunt tip. So you're just going to go in between there and then clip it together like so. And that is how you would wear it. So there's a lot of room in here to put fabric right in there. And then you're just going to undo it and pull it out. And if you want it a little farther away, it's possible just to bend this a little bit and it will snap back. So it's designed so that no pieces of it fall off. You don't lose anything. I tend to lose things a lot, like little pieces of shawl pins. So this one is one piece. Alrighty. So let's get going here on the pattern. I do have one thing to say first. I forgot to add in the materials that you need a cable needle. Um, I chronically forget the cable needle because I cable without a cable needle. So I'm so bad, and I apologize for that. In the next clue update, I will also update this second clue to include that cable needle. Alrighty, so I'm just going to check over here and make sure that I have everybody. Um, I'm not, okay. All right, so there are a couple of questions. Okay, and I will go over them. Um, alrighty. So first of all, this is a little tiny pattern section here. So don't miss it. that gives you instructions on what you're going to do. So it's Clue is worked entirely in color 1, and you're just going to work chart C 1 time. Okay, so let's get to the next page. So I did have, there's some new stitches in here. So we're just going to go over those new stitches before I hit the pattern. And then here is the chart. These are all right side rows. And this is the wrong side row right here. Don't forget to read this little part down here. Whenever there's a double yarn over, you're going to work a purl 1, knit 1 into any double yarn over. Okay, so I had a question, and that was, what are the yellow columns in here? That is just a counting aid. So I do have a little note under my key to chart symbols. So basically all that happens is when there's a lot of stockinette like this in this area here, I find it very easy to get lost in the middle. So these strips are columns of 5, and they're numbered from right to left. So you're going to count just right across 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, right across here. Okay, so let's go over here, and I'm going to show you the new stitches we have. So there's this one of my favorites, and it's going to be a knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 into a stitch. Then we have a make 1, and we have a CDD, that's a center double decrease, and then hard to see on this kind of so-so printout, but this is a red CDD. And then over here we have a 2/2 right cross cable. So I'm going to show you how to do all of those. And then I'm going to go on and we'll take a look at the chart. So first, let's do the knit 1, yarn over, knit 1. And let me see, just trying to keep up over here. I love it when you all join me for the lives. I know that you can watch them later, and I really appreciate it when you're here. It's really nice to see you over there in the chat. Okay, so let me just get a few stitches in here. All right, so we're going to do the knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 into a stitch. So it's all going to be in this next stitch right here. I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm not going to take that stitch off my needle. I'm going to yarn over immediately and then knit another stitch into that one stitch and pull the stitch off the needle. So this is 3 stitches into 1. It's an increase of 2 stitches. So it's a little different way to do it. You could also do it knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, but I like the lower profile of the yarn over in the middle. So that's that first stitch. That is this stitch. So we're going to go over to the make 1, and if I don't specify left or right, you can use whichever make 1 you want. Just going to knit over a couple of stitches. So this is going to be a make 1. For any make 1 that you do, it's going to be this bar right here in between stitches. You're going to pick that up and twist it to make your stitch. So whereas if you wanted to make a yarn over, you would not twist that. So in other words, if you forgot a yarn over and you're going back the other way and you pick up that bar in between stitches to add a yarn over, it makes a hole. But with the make 1, you want to twist the base there so that it does not make a hole. So I'm just going to pick this bar up in between the stitches and place it up on my left needle. And I'm just going to keep my right needle in that loop there because I'm already twisting the stitch. And then I'm going to knit one into it. And you can see that one stitch is made in between. Okay, so I'm just going to knit over a couple more stitches. And we're at the CDD. So double decreases, and there are all sorts of ways to do decreases, and especially double decreases. One of the things that you want to make sure of in lace is that there's a nice unbroken running length columns of stitches. That's part of what makes it so pretty is those unbroken columns of stitches running over. So one way to do that is to do a CDD, and that is going to make this column of stitches in the middle here. That is going to be an unbroken column. So what we're going to do is make this stitch column here be on top when we're finished with the stitch. So the one to the right and the one to the left will be behind the middle one. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert my needle like I was going to knit two together and then slip those two stitches. They need to be slipped together. And next, I'm going to knit one stitch. And now I'm going to slip these two stitches over that stitch that I just did. So you can see an unbroken column in the center here, and that's exactly what we were after. Okay, so let's go over just a little bit. Alrighty, so now we are over to the CDD on all but the last repeat. So we're going to knit two together, and I'm just going to go through that when we get to the actual chart. It will become more apparent when you see the chart, what's going on there. Okay, so we have a 2/2 right cross cable. So 2/2 means there are two stitches that are going to cross over another two stitches. So this is going to involve 4 stitches. And I want the second 2 stitches to cross over these first 2 stitches. So there are 2 ways to do that. One of them is to use a cable needle, and you would be holding these 2 stitches to the back, or you can use anything. I often, well, actually, I chronically lose my cable needles, so I just use a double pointed needle. So let me show you what this is going to look like if I were to use just a cable needle. I'm going to slip those 2 stitches over to my cable needle, which is actually a double pointed needle, but don't tell. Now, those 2 are going to be held to the back here. I'm just holding that to the back of my knitting. And I'm going to knit these 2 stitches off of my working needle. Okay, so I have knit those 2 stitches off of my working needle. And now I'm going to pull this just a little bit so I don't lose those stitches. And now I am going to knit 2 stitches off of my cable needle. So there are my 2 stitches being knit off of my cable needle. Okay, and now I'm all crossed there. You can see those 2 stitches cross over to the right. Okay, so let me show you how you are going to do that if you don't want to use a cable needle. Okay, so I'm going to do these 4 stitches. Again, I want the second 2 stitches to cross right over these first 2 stitches. So the first thing I'm going to do is slip these 4 stitches, and I'm slipping them all purlwise because I don't want to reorient any of these stitches. Since I want these stitches to go over the top, I'm going to bring my left needle around back, and it's going to go into these 2 stitches here. And now I'm going to pinch the base of those 2 stitches that I didn't insert the needle through, and put them on my needle, my right needle, so they can cross over. And now I'm just going to slip these back onto my left needle. Looks a little bit bunched up right now, but now I can knit these all the way across. There we go. So that's 3 and 4. Okay, so here are the 2 ways that you're going to do your right cross cable, whichever you prefer. There is no right or wrong way as long as as long as 4 stitches are involved and those 2 stitches are crossing to the right above the other 2 stitches. Okay, now I'm just gonna get to the end here and let's take a look at this chart. Alrighty. So there's some fun stuff in this chart that you may or may not have seen before. So let's take a look here. First of all, this is only the right side rows. Okay, so second, I want to take a look here, especially at rows 1 and 5. So the first thing I want to note is that on row 1 here you can see that little cable symbol is there, and the repeat line goes straight through the middle of that cable symbol. I kind of went back and forth on whether or not to move the repeat over a little bit, but I thought if some of you were using stitch markers, it would be really confusing. So what's going to happen is if you are using stitch markers, this cable will go across the stitch marker. So you're just going to cable, and then the 2 stitches that were to the left of your stitch marker are going to end up to the right, and the 2 that were on the right are going to end up on the left. So that's going to happen all the way across the row. So you can see it goes right here through half of the symbol, and then on the other side it also goes through half the symbol. So that makes a full cable. So once you get over to this side here, you see this half of a cable goes to this half of a cable. And then there are no stitches in this dark spot here. So there's literally nothing there. You will not see, there are no stitches to slip, nothing at all to slip there. Okay. In the written instructions, if you are comparing the two, you'll see here that the 2 over 2 right cross is outside of the repeat. And that is because it is super confusing if I said something like, oh, half the cable is going to be in the repeat and half of it is going to be outside the repeat. Easy to show, very difficult to write. So I went with just moving the repeat over a little bit. So for just the rows 1 and 5, you'll see that the repeat does not match the chart repeat. It is the same thing. So when you knit it, you will come out with exactly the same result. It just looks different. So, okie doke. Alrighty. So let's see what else. One of the things I love to do is to increase kind of organically within each repeat here instead of having spines or just having like an abrupt change in pattern and just adding extra yarn overs or something like that. I like the organic look of it. So you'll see in here that on any given row that your stitch counts are going to change. So I want to show you how you can count your stitches to make sure that you're on if you are a stitch counter. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is if you see like right up here on 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, you can see that there's an SSK and it is on the right side here of the repeat. So every time you have one of those SSKs, so you take a look here, there are 4 stitches and on row 15 here. And then on 17, this part outside of the repeat uses 5 stitches. So that means you're going to be borrowing a stitch from your repeat. So if you have used stitch markers, then that means your marker is going to change a little bit. Okay, so when that happens, it happens all the way across. So you can see along here, there are CDDs all along this area here. So on repeats 1 through 6, so the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth time that you work this area here, you are going to do a CDD. So at the end, on the very last time you work it, on the 7th time through this box here, you are going to do an SSK instead of a CDD. And that is because there aren't any more repeats over here. There's nothing else to borrow. So I thought that this was actually less confusing than what it looks like if I make a huge wide chart and the only stitch here that is changed is the last stitch. So I went with the making it red. So each one of these red ones here, CDD times 1 through 6 when you're working this. The 7th time through this repeat box here, it's going to be an SSK. Okay, so just checking here to make sure no one has any questions. Don't be shy if you have any questions. I'd love to answer questions. Okay, so next, let's talk a little bit about how everybody is working their charts. So as the chart gets bigger like this, I think it becomes more and more important to have a really good chart management system. And whichever one you choose, you are going to want to cover the part you have not worked. So you're going to be going up row by row as you work so that you are uncovering everything that you have knitted beforehand and covering up the top. So for instance, I don't want to go the other way. If I am covering things up as I go up, then I can't tell if everything is lining up. So this way, as I'm moving up the chart, I can actually see how all the stitches are lining up here. So I'm just going straight up the chart. And you'll be able to see these lines of stitches as they come to the middle. Okay, so counting your stitches. Alrighty, so when you count your stitches on a chart, you only want to use the number of boxes as a rough estimate. So, and that means, for instance, you could have maybe 6 boxes, six little chart squares here, and you might use 7, 8, 9, 10 stitches. You could have 6 chart squares, boxes, and you might use just 3 stitches. So just the box by itself is not going to get you where you want. So if you're interested in counting how many stitches a row uses, you are going to take a look here. Okay, so I'll start over here at the right side. These 3 first stitches here, that uses 3 stitches, so I'm good there. These 2 boxes here, those use 2 stitches, so still even. And as I'm going, this little box right here does not use a stitch. It's a yarn over, so it does not use a stitch. So that uses 0 stitches. This next one here, the CDD, that is going to use 3 stitches. And as we go along, these all use 1 stitch. Yarn overs will use 0 stitches. We're back over here to CDD. So often what I do to sort of look over this pretty quickly is just look for the increases and the decreases and see if they balance out. So here's 1 increase, 2, 3. There are 4 increases here. So now let's look for decreases. There's 2 decreases here and 2 decreases here. So 4 increases, 4 decreases. So that means that row is completely even. So as we're going up here, you can see that it looks like something's happening here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And I'll just tell you ahead of time, I moved these cables over so that these stitches go right together, and I didn't separate the cable stitch. But this could be a little sticking point here. So I'm just going to double check myself, show you how you might do that. So there's 1 increase, 2 increase. Going to go all the way across 3, and there are 4 increases within this box here. And now I'm going to look for decreases. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 increases, 4 decreases, and that is going to show you that that the stitch count here does not change. So one of the very cool things about lace is that it's pretty forgiving because it's knit at such a large gauge. So when you're taking a look here, you can see how this sort of moves in and out along the edge here. So it doesn't, in other words, it's not just like an increase every row or every other row. There are also decreases on some rows. And up at the top here, this last row here looks like there are fewer stitches than down below here. There aren't, but we'll get there soon. So one of the very cool things about lace is that in addition to just the patterning, like with the yarn overs and the decreases and all the other types of stitches, you can also use the actual number of stitches to pattern. So you can make things pull in certain areas and add to the pattern, or you can make extra material in some other places, and that also adds to the pattern. So this type of increase and decrease is it's often used in doilies, for instance. If you're interested in doilies, they're very fun. So this little area here adds to the patterning, and this is going to kind of stretch this area up above here, and you'll see what it looks like. I think it's really pretty. So it looks kind of like it's a mistake, but it's not. Okay, so let's take a look up here at the top. So you can see here's a stitch to watch out for. We looked at that before. And that is going to be 3 stitches in that one box right here. So when you're counting your stitches, make sure that you add another 2 right in here in that repeat. And the other thing I want to tell you about this is as you're going along, as you're working this, you will see that these decreases here add up to an unbroken line of stitches. So you'll be able to see by looking at your knitting whether or not you are making mistakes or actually getting everything right. So I don't want to show you, obviously, because it's a mystery, but you'll see. This is going to make a really pretty unbroken line of stitches right across here. And then you're going to have some other little spines of yarn overs in this area, some more spines of yarn overs in this area. Okay, now one more thing here. So we have an SK2P and then a knit 3 together. So what this is going to do is this knit 3 together right here is going to take these 3 stitches right below and come up here and use those 3 stitches to make that knit 3 together. So this yarn over is going to be centered right above the tip here. Okay, so let me see. Just going to check to make sure that nobody has any questions. Okay. Alrighty. So I am actually, I'm going to kind of back out a little bit on my swatch here. And I want to show you what it would look like to cable across a stitch marker. I'm just going to take this out a little bit. So one thing about this cable, the cable in the pattern, is that on the very edge, you'll notice that it goes into the edging. So don't worry about that. There's just no other way really to get that cable, that kind of cable effect there without having it go into the edging. So if you're using stitch markers, this is what you're going to see here as you come up to that cable. So I want to take these 2 stitches and cross them over these 2 stitches over here. So again, I'm going to slip this. I'm just going to take my marker out for now. And I'm going to show you cabling without a cable needle. So again, here I am going to slip that back. Okay, so here I have it all set up just to knit across. So I'm going to knit those 2 stitches and then replace my stitch marker and knit the next 2 stitches. So now I have my stitch marker right back in the middle of that cable, and you're only going to have to do that for 2 rows. So not a lot of rows. Okay, so there is one thing I would like to talk about as far as cables go. When you see this symbol here for a cable, you're looking at, let's say, we're just looking at row 5. What if you have to rip out, or you put it down and you don't remember where you are? Maybe you weren't keeping track, and you see this cable here and you're looking for the cable on your knitting. Always remember that even though the symbol for the cable is on row 5, the actual loops that you use to twist are from row 4. So on row 5, what you're going to see is just straight knitting right across. So these stitches here, these loops that we have used to twist, those are from row 4. So if you're counting, just remember that looking at the symbol, that little twist that you see, the twist will actually appear on row 4 and not row 5. So important for that. Okay, so just checking to make sure nobody has questions. Okay, alrighty. So back to this, we have again the SSSK, just like we did in the first clue. That is this right here. It's the opposite of a knit 3 together. And over here, there's the knit 3 together. So this motif here is going to come up into a point, and everything else is going to come up to that point as well. Alrighty. So if you get down to a place where you are worried about possibly having miscrossed a cable, there are ways to just ladder down and recross the cable, but I would not suggest it in this particular, in the middle of the lace. So if you have miscrossed a cable, I would say either to rip it or pin it out to fix it. So those of you who have taken my class on cable surgery and lace surgery know what I'm talking about. It's process. So not a bad idea to rip. Okay, let me check to make sure that everybody, okay, just checking for questions. Alrighty. Okay, well, we are getting towards the end. So if does anybody have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I will kind of blather just a little bit and make sure that I'm not missing anything. I'm not missing anybody. Oh, don't miss this right up here also, just to call your attention. There's a little knit 1 yarn over, knit 1 over to the right before your repeat begins as well. So don't miss that one. Okay. So a question is, how often would you suggest putting in a lifeline? There's no firm number, so it's your comfort zone. So however many times you feel like you want to, the one thing that I want to suggest is before you put in a lifeline, make sure that everything up to that point is correct. So you don't want to have any mistakes below the lifeline. And I'm just saying that from personal experience. And then when you put in a lifeline, make sure that you mark it on the chart where it goes. So for instance, if I wanted to put one through the loops of row 4, then I would mark on my chart where it is in case I have to rip. So, and I'm sorry, Phoebe. Yes, you are absolutely right. I think I said it was an SSK. Did I? It should have been a knit two together, not SSK. So I believe I misspoke, but it's actually a knit two together. So, but I think I did misspeak. Thank you for your sharp ears. Sorry about that. So it is knit two together on the red CDD. Okay. Um, Next time, so probably some of you do not know what a lifeline is, and I don't have a piece of dental floss to show you right now or any waste yarn. However, I will next time. I will actually, I'll probably just make a little tiny short and let you know where you can see how to put in a lifeline. A lifeline is basically just a piece of waste yarn that you put through the stitches on your needle, and you're just going to leave the waste yarn in there. I like to knot it around so it doesn't come out, and you basically ignore it. I always put mine through my markers because markers do tend to move around. So then after it's put through my markers, I replace the markers on the next row. And if I have to rip back, I can rip back and know where my markers will be when I get there. So let me see. So there was a comment about gauge. I got the stitch gauge, but my row gauge is off. Extra 5 rows per 4 inches. Will this be a problem? Um, it could be a problem in the amount of yarn you're using. That's the only problem. So there isn't, it's not going to affect the design badly. It's just going to possibly make you use more yarn. So, were you about on with the test knitters? So just let me know when we get to that part. And let me see. Okay. Okay. So let's switch back over. Okay. So one thing I did want to say is I know that YouTube is now putting up text, like once it processes, it doesn't do it automatically with lives. So I've just kept my web captioning up there for the live, even though I know it's going to be basically kind of written over by YouTube later on. So I just wanted to make sure that if you need the captioning for the live, that you have it here. So if you do need captioning and this is, there's some weird stuff that comes up in the captions, come back later. YouTube's captioning is actually better, but this is not bad for live. So let me see. Okay. Just checking to make sure. I think I've gone through everything that I wanted to go through. Oh, except there is one part of the chart on row 7. There's going to be a double yarn over again, and we went through that last time um, on our Clue 1 YouTube live. So it's going to be worked exactly like that again. So one yarn over is going to be on one side of the stitch marker if you've used it, and the second half of that double yarn over is going to be on the other side. Treat that just like you did before. You're going to purl one, knit one into it, and don't worry if it kind of pops off the needle or something like that, a double yarn over is really just a big hole. So as long as you have those 2 stitches from the double yarn over, you're totally good. And just checking through here again, looks like it's all good. So thank you again for joining me. And don't forget, those of you who are watching live or who are watching before tomorrow, Avert for Keeping Warm is having a Zoom meetup, and I will be there as well. So that is 2 to 3 Pacific time tomorrow, and that's also in your clue. And don't forget, if you are on Ravelry, come by my forum. There's great threads on my Ravelry forum. The moderators are fantastic. There are lots of people there to knit along with, and you will see if there are any errata or any issues whatsoever. Um, Lots of people like to post extra sort of tips that they've used. Some people are beating the shawl. So there's some really cool stuff over there. It's at the at Romi's Studio Forum on Ravelry, and it would be lovely to see you over there. So thank you for joining me. I'm just going to check one more time to make sure I didn't miss anyone's question. So I think we're good. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you very soon. You all take care.